Have you ever wondered how a single act of kindness can change someone's life forever? What if I told you that a simple gesture, like giving up your seat, could lead to a moment so shocking, so life-altering, that it would leave you questioning everything you thought you knew about compassion, gratitude, and love? This is the story of a young boy named Malik, an elderly woman named Mrs. Thompson, and a note that changed everything. But before we get to the shocking twist, let's start at the beginning. And hey, if you're enjoying this story so far, don't forget to hit that like button and subscribe to the channel for more heartwarming and life-changing tales. Now let's dive in. It was a crisp autumn morning in Chicago, and the city was alive with its usual hustle and bustle. Malik Johnson, a 12-year-old boy with a heart as big as his dreams, was on his way to school. Malik was the kind of kid who always looked out for others. Maybe it was because he had been raised by his single mom, Lisa, who worked 2 jobs just to keep food on the table. Life wasn't easy for Malik, but he never let that stop him from being kind. He had a mop of curly black hair, a wide smile that could light up a room, and a pair of sneakers that had seen better days. But none of that mattered to Malik. What mattered was making his mom proud. As Malik boarded the crowded bus, he noticed an elderly woman struggling to find a seat. Her name was Mrs. Thompson, though Malik didn't know that yet. She was in her late 70s, with silver hair pulled back into a neat bun and a face lined with years of wisdom and hardship. She carried a worn leather handbag and walked with a slight limp, leaning heavily on her cane. The bus was packed, and no one seemed to notice her. Or if they did, they pretended not to. Malik didn't hesitate. He stood up, his backpack slung over one shoulder, and offered her his seat. "Here, ma'am, you can sit here," he said with a smile. Mrs. Thompson looked surprised, as if she hadn't expected such kindness from a stranger, let alone a young boy. "Thank you, young man," she said softly, her voice trembling slightly. She sat down, and Malik held onto the overhead rail, swaying slightly as the bus rumbled down the street. For the next few minutes, Malik and Mrs. Thompson exchanged small talk. She asked him about school, and he told her he wanted to be a doctor one day. She smiled at that, her eyes twinkling with something Malik couldn't quite place. "You're a good boy," she said. "The world needs more people like you." When Malik's stop came, he waved goodbye to Mrs. Thompson and hopped off the bus, not thinking much of the encounter. But little did he know, his life was about to change in ways he could never have imagined. 5 minutes later, as the bus pulled away, Mrs. Thompson reached into her handbag and pulled out a small, folded piece of paper. She scribbled something on it, her hands shaking slightly, and then handed it to the bus driver. "Please," she said, "make sure that young boy gets this." The bus driver, a gruff man named Carl, raised an eyebrow but took the note without question. He didn't know what it said, but something about the urgency in Mrs. Thompson's voice made him promise to deliver it. Meanwhile, Malik was walking to school, completely unaware of the note that was now making its way back to him. He was thinking about his math test later that day and whether he'd studied enough. But as he turned the corner, he heard someone calling his name. "Malik! Malik Johnson!" He turned around to see Carl, the bus driver, jogging toward him, holding a piece of paper in his hand. "You dropped this," Carl said, handing him the note. Malik frowned. "I didn't drop anything," he said, but he took the note anyway. As he unfolded it, his heart skipped a beat. The handwriting was neat but hurried, and the words sent a chill down his spine. "Dear Malik," it read, **, you don't know me, but you showed me kindness when I needed it most. I don't have much time left, but I want to give you something that will change your life. Meet me at 123 Maple Street at 3 p.m. today. Don't tell anyone. Just come. Mrs. Thompson, **. Malik's mind raced. What could this mean? Who was Mrs. Thompson, and why did she want to meet him? And what could she possibly have that would change his life? He didn't know, but one thing was certain. He had to find out. As the bell rang for class, Malik tucked the note into his pocket, his heart pounding. The day seemed to drag on, every minute feeling like an hour. All he could think about was the note and what it might mean. Little did he know, this was just the beginning of a journey that would test his courage, challenge his beliefs, and ultimately change his life forever. But what would happen when Malik showed up at 123 Maple Street? What was Mrs. Thompson hiding? And how could a simple act of kindness lead to something so shocking? The answers were coming, but not yet. For now, Malik had to wait, his mind swirling with questions and his heart filled with a strange mix of excitement and fear. The day wasn't over yet, and neither was this story. Malik's school day felt like it would never end. His teachers' voices blurred into the background as he stared at the clock, willing the hands to move faster. The note from Mrs. Thompson burned a hole in his pocket, and his mind raced with possibilities. What could she possibly want to give him? Why had she chosen him? And why did she seem so urgent? When the final bell finally rang, Malik grabbed his backpack and bolted out the door. He didn't even stop to chat with his best friend, Jamal, who called after him, "Hey Malik, where you going, man?" But Malik just waved and kept running. He didn't have time to explain. He didn't even know how to explain. The address on the note led him to a quiet neighborhood on the outskirts of the city. The houses were old but well kept, with neatly trimmed lawns and flower beds that were just starting to fade with the approach of winter. Malik's sneakers slapped against the pavement as he jogged down Maple Street, counting the house numbers until he reached 123. The house was small but charming, with a white picket fence and a porch swing that swayed gently in the breeze. Malik hesitated for a moment, his hand hovering over the gate. What was he walking into? Was this some kind of prank? But something about the note, the urgency in Mrs. Thompson's words, made him push the gate open and walk up the path to the front door. Before he could knock, the door creaked open, and there stood Mrs. Thompson. She looked different now, more fragile than she had on the bus. Her silver hair was loose around her shoulders, and she was wearing a soft pink cardigan that hung loosely on her thin frame. But her eyes were the same, kind, wise, and filled with something Malik couldn't quite place. "You came," she said, her voice barely above a whisper. "I wasn't sure you would." "Of course I came," Malik said, stepping inside. "But why did you want to see me? What's going on?" Mrs. Thompson didn't answer right away. Instead, she led him into the living room, which was cozy but cluttered with books, photo albums, and trinkets from what looked like a lifetime of memories. She gestured for him to sit on the couch, and she settled into an armchair across from him, her hands clasped tightly in her lap. "Malik," she began, her voice trembling slightly, "I don't have much time left. The doctors say it could be weeks, maybe even days. And when I met you on the bus this morning, I knew I had to do something. You see, I don't have any family left. No children, no grandchildren. Just me. And I've been carrying something with me for a long time. Something that needs to be passed on to someone who deserves it." Malik's heart was pounding now. "What is it?" he asked, his voice barely above a whisper. Mrs. Thompson reached into the pocket of her cardigan and pulled out a small, ornate key. It was old, with intricate designs etched into the metal, and it gleamed in the soft light of the room. She held it out to Malik, her hand shaking slightly. "This key," she said, "opens a safe deposit box at the First National Bank downtown. Inside that box is something that will change your life. But it's not just about the money, Malik. It's about what it represents. It's about love and kindness and the legacy we leave behind." Malik stared at the key, his mind reeling. Money? A legacy? What was she talking about? I don't understand," he said. "Why me? Why are you giving this to me?" Mrs. Thompson smiled, her eyes filling with tears. "Because you reminded me of someone I used to know," she said. "Someone who believed in the good in people, even when the world tried to convince them otherwise. And because you have a good heart, Malik. I can see it in your eyes. You're the kind of person who will use this gift to make a difference." Malik didn't know what to say. He felt a lump forming in his throat, and his hands trembled as he took the key from her. I don't know how to thank you," he stammered. "You don't have to thank me," Mrs. Thompson said softly. "Just promise me one thing. Promise me you'll use this gift to help others, to make the world a better place." Malik nodded, tears welling up in his eyes. "I promise," he said. For a moment, they sat in silence, the weight of the moment hanging heavy in the air. Then Mrs. Thompson leaned back in her chair, her eyes closing briefly as if she were exhausted. "There's one more thing," she said, her voice barely audible now. "The box, it's not just about what's inside. It's about the journey. You'll need to find the answers, Malik. The key is just the beginning. Before Malik could ask what she meant, Mrs. Thompson's eyes fluttered shut, and her breathing became shallow. Panic surged through him as he realized something was wrong. "Mrs. Thompson?" he said, his voice rising. "Mrs. Thompson, are you okay?" But she didn't respond. Her hand slipped from the armrest, and her head tilted to the side. Malik jumped to his feet, his heart racing. "Mrs. Thompson," he shouted, shaking her gently. But she didn't wake up. Tears streamed down Malik's face as he fumbled for his phone, his hands shaking so badly he could barely dial 911. "Please," he whispered as the operator answered. "Please, I need help. I think she's dying." As he waited for the ambulance to arrive, Malik clutched the key in his hand, his mind spinning with questions. What had just happened? What was in the safe deposit box? And what did Mrs. Thompson mean when she said the key was just the beginning? The sound of sirens grew louder in the distance, but Malik couldn't move. He just sat there, staring at the key, wondering what kind of journey he was about to embark on, and whether he was ready for it. Little did he know, the answers were closer than he thought. But they would come at a cost, and the road ahead would be anything but easy. For now, all Malik could do was wait, and hope that he was strong enough to face whatever came next. The ambulance arrived in a blur of flashing lights and urgent voices. Paramedics rushed into the house, their movements quick and efficient as they assessed Mrs. Thompson's condition. Malik stood frozen in the corner of the room, clutching the key so tightly it left an imprint in his palm. His heart pounded as he watched them work, their voices a jumble of medical terms he didn't understand. "She's unresponsive," one of the paramedics said, placing an oxygen mask over Mrs. Thompson's face. "We need to get her to the hospital now." Malik's stomach churned as they lifted her onto a stretcher and wheeled her out of the house. He followed them to the porch, his legs feeling like they were made of lead. One of the paramedics turned to him, her expression softening when she saw the tears streaming down his face. "Are you family?" she asked gently. Malik shook his head. "No, I just met her today. She asked me to come here." The paramedic nodded, her eyes filled with sympathy. "We'll take care of her. You did the right thing by calling us." Malik watched as they loaded Mrs. Thompson into the ambulance and sped off, the sirens fading into the distance. He stood there for what felt like forever, the cool autumn air biting at his skin. His mind was a whirlwind of emotions. Fear, confusion, and a deep, aching sadness. He barely knew Mrs. Thompson, but in the short time they'd spent together, she had left a lasting impression on him. And now, she was gone. The key in his hand felt heavier than ever. What was he supposed to do now? Mrs. Thompson had given him a task, a responsibility, but he had no idea where to start. The safe deposit box. That was the first step, but how was he supposed to get to the bank? And what would he even say when he got there? Malik took a deep breath, trying to steady his nerves. He needed to think. He needed a plan. But first he needed to get home. His mom would be worried if he didn't show up soon. As he walked back to the bus stop, Malik's mind raced. He thought about Mrs. Thompson's words, about the journey and the answers he needed to find. What did she mean by that? What kind of answers was he supposed to be looking for? And what was in the box that was so important? By the time he got home, it was late. The sun had set, and the streets were bathed in the warm glow of streetlights. Malik's mom, Lisa, was in the kitchen, stirring a pot of soup on the stove. She looked up when he walked in, her brow furrowing with concern. "Malik, where have you been?" she asked. "I was starting to get worried." I had to help someone," Malik said, his voice shaky. He didn't know how much to tell her. Would she even believe him if he told her the truth? Lisa set the spoon down and walked over to him, placing a hand on his shoulder. "Are you okay? You look like you've seen a ghost." Malik hesitated, then nodded. "I'm okay. It's just something happened today. Something really weird." Lisa studied his face for a moment, then sighed. "Come on, sit down. Tell me everything." Malik sat at the kitchen table, the key still clutched in his hand. He told his mom about meeting Mrs. Thompson on the bus, about the note, and about what had happened at her house. Lisa listened quietly, her expression growing more and more serious as he spoke. When he finished, she sat back in her chair, her eyes wide with disbelief. "Malik, this is a lot. Are you sure you're okay? I don't know, Malik admitted. I don't know what to do. Lisa reached across the table and took his hand. First thing tomorrow, we'll go to the bank together. We'll figure this out? Okay. You're not alone in this. Malik nodded, feeling a small sense of relief. At least he didn't have to face this by himself. But as he lay in bed that night, staring at the ceiling, he couldn't shake the feeling that something big was about to happen. Something that would change everything. The next morning, Malik and his mom took the bus downtown to the First National Bank. The building was tall and imposing, with marble floors and a vaulted ceiling that made Malik feel small. He clutched the key in his pocket as they approached the teller, his heart pounding. "Can I help you?" the teller asked, her tone polite but indifferent. "Yes," Lisa said, stepping forward. "My son has a safe deposit box here. We'd like to access it." The teller glanced at Malik, then nodded. "Do you have a key?" Malik pulled the key from his pocket and handed it to her. The teller examined it for a moment, then nodded again. "Follow me." She led them through a series of secure doors until they reached a room filled with rows of small metal boxes. Malik's stomach churned as she inserted the key into one of the boxes and pulled it out, placing it on a table in the center of the room. "Take your time," the teller said before leaving them alone. Malik and his mom exchanged a glance, then slowly opened the box. Inside was a stack of papers, a small velvet pouch, and a sealed envelope with Malik's name on it. Malik's hands trembled as he picked up the envelope and opened it. Inside was a letter, written in the same neat handwriting as the note Mrs. Thompson had given him on the bus. "Dear Malik," it began. Asterisk, if you're reading this, it means I'm no longer here. But don't be sad. This is just the beginning of your journey. Inside this box, you'll find something that will change your life. But remember, it's not just about the money. It's about the choices you make and the person you become. Use this gift wisely, and always remember the kindness you showed me. It's that kindness that will guide you through whatever comes next. With love, Mrs. Thompson. Asterisk. Malik's eyes filled with tears as he set the letter aside and reached for the velvet pouch. Inside was a gold locket, its surface worn with age. He opened it carefully, revealing a small photograph of a young woman who looked strikingly like Mrs. Thompson. On the back of the locket was an inscription, asterisk, "To my dearest Eleanor, with all my love." Asterisk. Underneath the locket was a stack of cash, more money than Malik had ever seen in his life. His breath caught in his throat as he counted it. $10,000. Enough to change everything. But as he stared at the money, Malik couldn't shake the feeling that this was just the beginning. Mrs. Thompson had said the key was just the start of the journey. What did that mean? What else was out there waiting for him? And more importantly, was he ready to find out? The answers were coming, but not yet. For now, all Malik could do was take the first step and hope that he was strong enough to face whatever came next. The weight of the money and the locket in Malik's hands felt surreal. He stared at the stack of bills, his mind racing. $10,000. It was more than his mom made in months. It could pay off bills, buy new clothes, maybe even fix the leaky roof in their apartment. But Mrs. Thompson's words echoed in his mind. Asterisk, it's not just about the money. It's about the choices you make and the person you become. Asterisk. Lisa placed a hand on Malik's shoulder, her voice soft but steady. This is a lot to take in, but we need to think carefully about what to do next. Malik nodded, still staring at the money. What do you think she meant by the journey? What kind of answers am I supposed to find? Lisa sighed, running a hand through her hair. I don't know, Malik, but Mrs. Thompson clearly saw something special in you. Maybe this is her way of giving you a chance to make a difference. Not just for us, but for others too. Malik looked up at his mom, his eyes filled with determination. I want to do this right. I don't want to mess it up. Lisa smiled, pulling him into a hug. You won't. I believe in you. They left the bank with the contents of the safe deposit box carefully tucked into a bag. The locket hung around Malik's neck, its weight a constant reminder of Mrs. Thompson's words. As they walked home, Malik couldn't stop thinking about the photograph inside the locket. Who was Eleanor? And what did she have to do with Mrs. Thompson? When they got home, Malik sat at the kitchen table and spread out the stack of papers from the box. Most of them were old documents, bank statements, property deeds, and letters. But one piece of paper stood out. It was a faded newspaper clipping, its edges yellowed with age. The headline read, Asterisk, local teacher leaves lasting legacy. Asterisk. Malik's heart skipped a beat as he read the article. It was about a woman named Eleanor Thompson, a beloved schoolteacher who had dedicated her life to helping underprivileged children. She had passed away years ago, but her impact on the community was still felt. The article mentioned a scholarship fund she had started, aimed at helping students pursue their dreams. Malik's hands trembled as he set the clipping down. "Mom," he said, his voice barely above a whisper. "I think Eleanor was Mrs. Thompson's daughter." Lisa leaned over to read the article, her eyes widening. "This is incredible. It sounds like Eleanor was an amazing person. Maybe Mrs. Thompson wanted you to carry on her legacy." Malik's mind raced. Could that be it? Was this what Mrs. Thompson meant by the journey? To continue the work her daughter had started? Before he could say anything, there was a knock at the door. Malik and his mom exchanged a glance before Lisa went to answer it. Standing on the doorstep was a man in a suit, his expression serious but kind. "Good afternoon," he said. "My name is Mr. Grayson. I'm an attorney representing the estate of Mrs. Eleanor Thompson. May I come in?" Malik's heart pounded as Mr. Grayson stepped inside. He set his briefcase on the table and pulled out a folder, his movements precise and deliberate. "I understand you've recently come into possession of a safe deposit box belonging to Mrs. Thompson," he said, looking at Malik. "There are a few things you need to know." Malik nodded, his throat dry. "What kind of things?" Mr. Grayson opened the folder and slid a piece of paper across the table. It was a legal document filled with dense text and official seals. Mrs. Thompson left specific instructions regarding her estate. In addition to the contents of the safe deposit box, she has named you as the beneficiary of her home and a portion of her savings. However, there are conditions. Malik's eyes widened. "Conditions?" "Yes," Mr. Grayson said. "Mrs. Thompson wanted to ensure that her legacy would continue. To inherit the full estate, you must use the resources she's provided to make a positive impact in the community. Specifically, she wants you to revive the scholarship fund her daughter started." Malik stared at the document, his mind reeling. This was bigger than he had imagined. Much bigger. But how am I supposed to do that? "I'm just a kid." Mr. Grayson smiled faintly. "You won't be doing it alone. Mrs. Thompson has arranged for a team of advisors to assist you. But the vision, the direction, has to come from you. She believed you were the right person for this." Malik looked at his mom, who gave him an encouraging nod. Then he turned back to Mr. Grayson. "What happens if I don't do it?" Mr. Grayson's expression grew serious. "If you choose not to fulfill the conditions, the estate will be donated to a charitable organization. The choice is yours." Malik took a deep breath, his mind racing. This was a huge responsibility, but it was also an incredible opportunity. He thought about Mrs. Thompson's kindness, about the way she had looked at him on the bus. She had seen something in him, something he wasn't sure he saw in himself. But he wanted to live up to her faith in him. "I'll do it," he said, his voice steady. "I'll make sure her legacy lives on." Mr. Grayson nodded, a hint of approval in his eyes. "Very well. I'll be in touch to discuss the next steps. In the meantime, I suggest you start thinking about how you want to move forward." After Mr. Grayson left, Malik sat at the table, staring at the legal document. His mom sat beside him, her hand resting on his shoulder. "This is a lot to take on," she said. "But I know you can do it. You got a good heart, Malik." Just like Mrs. Thompson said. Malik nodded, but his mind was already racing ahead. He needed a plan. He needed to figure out how to revive the scholarship fund, how to make a difference. But where to start? As he sat there, the locket around his neck felt heavier than ever. He opened it again, staring at the photograph of Eleanor. She had dedicated her life to helping others. Now it was his turn to carry on that work. But as Malik began to sketch out ideas in his notebook, a thought nagged at the back of his mind. Mrs. Thompson had said the key was just the beginning. What else was out there waiting for him? What other challenges would he face? The journey was just beginning, and Malik knew it wouldn't be easy. But he was ready. He had to be. For Mrs. Thompson, for Eleanor, and for himself. The days that followed were a whirlwind of activity. Malik spent hours researching Eleanor Thompson's scholarship fund, poring over old records and talking to people who had known her. He learned that the fund had helped dozens of students over the years, providing them with the resources they needed to attend college and pursue their dreams. But after Eleanor's death, the fund had slowly dwindled, and eventually it had been forgotten. Malik was determined to change that. With the help of Mr. Grayson and a team of advisors, he began to lay the groundwork for reviving the scholarship fund. It wasn't easy. There were forms to fill out, meetings to attend, and decisions to make. But Malik threw himself into the work with everything he had. One afternoon, as he was sorting through a box of old documents, he came across a letter addressed to Eleanor. It was from a former student, thanking her for believing in him when no one else did. The letter was filled with gratitude and hope, and it brought tears to Malik's eyes. This was what it was all about, changing lives one person at a time. But as Malik worked, he couldn't shake the feeling that there was more to Mrs. Thompson's legacy than just the scholarship fund. The locket around his neck was a constant reminder of the mystery surrounding Eleanor and her mother. Who was Eleanor, really? And why had Mrs. Thompson chosen Malik to carry on her work? One evening, as he sat at the kitchen table with his mom, Malik brought up the question that had been nagging at him. Do you think there's more to this than just the scholarship fund? Mrs. Thompson said the key was just the beginning. What if there's something else out there? Something we haven't found yet? Lisa looked thoughtful. It's possible. Mrs. Thompson seemed like the kind of person who would have a lot of layers to her story. Maybe there's more to uncover. Malik nodded, his mind racing. I think I need to go back to her house. There might be clues there, something that can help me understand what she wanted me to do. The next day, Malik and his mom returned to Mrs. Thompson's house. The place felt different now, quieter and more solemn. Malik walked through the rooms, his eyes scanning every detail. He didn't know what he was looking for, but he hoped he would recognize it when he saw it. In the living room, he noticed a bookshelf filled with photo albums and trinkets. He pulled one of the albums off the shelf and began to flip through it. The pages were filled with photographs of Eleanor, as a child, as a young woman, as a teacher. There were pictures of her with students, at community events, and with her mother. Malik's heart ached as he realized how much love and joy these photos captured. As he turned the last page, a small envelope fell out of the album. Malik picked it up and opened it, his hands trembling. Inside was a handwritten note. To the one who finds this, it read, Asterisk, if you're reading this, it means you've taken the first step on the journey. But the path ahead is not easy. To truly understand my legacy, you must look beyond what you see. The answers are hidden in the places you least expect. Follow the clues, and you will find the truth. Edie, asterisk. Malik's heart raced as he read the note. This was it, the clue he had been looking for. But what did it mean? Where was he supposed to look? He showed the note to his mom, who frowned thoughtfully. It sounds like a scavenger hunt. Maybe there are more clues hidden around the house. They spent the next few hours searching every room, looking for anything that might be a clue. It wasn't until Malik went into the kitchen that he noticed something unusual. On the wall was a framed painting of a tree, its branches stretching out in all directions. But when Malik looked closer, he saw that one of the branches had a small, almost imperceptible mark on it, a tiny arrow pointing downward. Malik's heart skipped a beat. He carefully took the painting off the wall and found a small compartment hidden behind it. Inside was another envelope, this one containing a key and a note. Well done, the note read. Asterisk, but the journey is far from over. This key will open the door to the next step. Look for the place where memories are kept, and you will find what you seek. E.T. Asterisk. Malik held the key in his hand, his mind racing. Where were memories kept? A library? A museum? Then it hit him, the attic. That's where people kept old things, things they wanted to remember. He and his mom hurried up the stairs to the attic, their footsteps echoing in the quiet house. The attic was dusty and filled with boxes, but Malik's eyes were drawn to an old trunk in the corner. It was locked, but the key fit perfectly. Inside the trunk was a collection of letters, journals, and photographs. But what caught Malik's attention was a small, leather-bound book with the initials E.T. engraved on the cover. He opened it carefully, his heart pounding. The first page was a letter from Eleanor to her mother, written in a shaky hand. Dear Mom, It began, Asterisk, I don't have much time left, but I want you to know how much I love you. You've always been my guiding light, and I hope I've made you proud. Please, don't let my work die with me. Find someone who can carry it on, someone with a kind heart and a strong spirit. They'll know what to do. Asterisk. Tears streamed down Malik's face as he read the letter. He felt a deep connection to Eleanor, as if she were speaking directly to him. He flipped through the rest of the book, finding more letters, more clues, and more pieces of the puzzle. But as he reached the last page, he found something that made his blood run cold. It was a map, hand-drawn and marked with a series of symbols. At the top was a single word, asterisk beware. Asterisk. Malik's hands trembled as he held the map. What did it mean? What was he supposed to beware of? And where did the map lead? The answers were out there, waiting for him. But as Malik stared at the map, he couldn't shake the feeling that the journey was about to get a lot more dangerous. And he had no idea what he was walking into. The map was old, its edges frayed and its lines faded, but the symbols were clear enough. Malik spread it out on the kitchen table, his mom leaning over his shoulder as they studied it together. The map depicted a series of landmarks in the city, a park, a library, a church connected by a winding path. At the end of the path was an X, marked with the same word that had sent a chill down Malik's spine. Asterisk, beware. Asterisk. What do you think it means? Malik asked, his voice barely above a whisper. Lisa frowned, her eyes scanning the map. I don't know, but it looks like some kind of treasure hunt. Maybe Mrs. Thompson, or Eleanor, wanted you to follow this path to find something important. Malik's heart raced. But what's at the end? And why did she write beware? Lisa shook her head. There's only one way to find out. But we need to be careful. If Mrs. Thompson left a warning, there's probably a good reason. The first stop on the map was a park not far from Mrs. Thompson's house. Malik and his mom decided to start there the next day. That night, Malik barely slept. His mind was filled with questions and possibilities. What would they find? And what kind of danger were they walking into? The next morning, they set out early, the map tucked safely in Malik's backpack. The park was quiet, with only a few joggers and dog walkers scattered around. Malik followed the map to a large oak tree near the center of the park. According to the map, there was something hidden here. But what? They searched the base of the tree, looking for anything out of the ordinary. It wasn't until Malik noticed a small, hollow knot in the trunk that he found what they were looking for. Inside the hollow was a small metal box, its surface rusted with age. Malik's hands trembled as he opened the box. Inside was a folded piece of paper and a small, intricately carved wooden figurine. The figurine was of a bird, its wings spread as if in flight. Malik unfolded the paper and read the message written on it. Asterisk, the journey is long, but the reward is great. Follow the path, but trust no one. The next clue lies where knowledge is kept. Eat. Asterisk. Malik showed the note to his mom, who nodded thoughtfully. Where knowledge is kept, that has to be the library. They made their way to the city library, a grand old building with tall columns and a wide staircase. Inside, the air was cool and quiet, filled with the faint smell of old books. Malik followed the map to the section on local history, where he found a book with a familiar symbol on the spine, the same bird that was carved on the figurine. He pulled the book off the shelf and opened it. Inside was another note, tucked between the pages. Asterisk, you're getting closer, but the danger grows. The next clue is hidden where the past meets the present. Eat. Asterisk. Malik frowned. Where the past meets the present. What does that mean? Lisa thought for a moment. Maybe it's the History Museum. That's where the past and present come together. They hurried to the museum, their excitement growing with each step. The museum was a sprawling building filled with exhibits on the city's history. Malik followed the map to an exhibit on the early 20th century, where he found a display case filled with old photographs and artifacts. One of the photographs caught his eye. It was of a young woman standing in front of a schoolhouse, her smile bright and full of hope. Malik recognized her immediately. It was Eleanor. Beside the photograph was a small plaque with a quote. Asterisk, the future belongs to those who believe in the beauty of their dreams. Asterisk. Malik's heart swelled with emotion as he read the quote. He felt a deep connection to Eleanor, as if she were guiding him through this journey. But as he looked closer at the display case, he noticed something unusual. One of the artifacts, a small, ornate box, had a symbol on it that matched the bird figurine. He pointed it out to his mom, who nodded. That has to be the next clue. They waited until the museum was less crowded. Then Malik carefully opened the display case and took the box. Inside was another note and a small key. Asterisk, you're almost there, but the final test is the hardest. The last clue is hidden where the heart of the city beats. Beware, the danger is real. Eat. Asterisk. Malik's hands trembled as he held the key. Where the heart of the city beats. What does that mean? Lisa thought for a moment. Maybe it's City Hall. That's where the city's decisions are made, where its heart beats. They made their way to City Hall, a towering building in the center of the city. The map led them to a statue in the courtyard, a monument to the city's founders. At the base of the statue was a small, hidden compartment. Malik inserted the key and turned it, his heart pounding. Inside the compartment was a final note and a small, velvet pouch. Malik unfolded the note and read it aloud. Asterisk, congratulations, you've made it this far. But the journey is not over. The danger is real, and the choices you make now will determine everything. Inside this pouch is the final piece of the puzzle. Use it wisely, and remember, the legacy is yours to protect. Eat. Asterisk. Malik opened the pouch and gasped. Inside was a small, golden key, its surface gleaming in the sunlight. But what did it unlock? And what danger was waiting for him? As Malik held the key, he felt a surge of determination. He had come this far, and he wasn't going to stop now. Whatever was waiting for him at the end of this journey, he was ready to face it. But as he and his mom turned to leave, a shadow moved in the corner of his eye. He spun around, his heart racing, but there was no one there. Still, he couldn't shake the feeling that they were being watched. The journey was far from over, and the danger was closer than ever. Malik knew he had to be careful, but he also knew he couldn't turn back now. The answers were within reach, but at what cost? The golden key felt heavy in Malik's hand, its weight a constant reminder of the responsibility he now carried. He and his mom left City Hall, the sun dipping low in the sky, casting long shadows across the streets. Malik couldn't shake the feeling that they were being watched. Every rustle of leaves, every distant footstep, made him glance over his shoulder. The note's warning, asterisk, the danger is real, asterisk, echoed in his mind. We need to figure out what this key opens, Malik said, his voice low as they walked. But I don't even know where to start. Lisa nodded, her expression thoughtful. Mrs. Thompson, or Eleanor, must have left more clues. Maybe we missed something in the earlier notes. They stopped at a small cafe to regroup, spreading out the map and the notes on a corner table. Malik studied the golden key, turning it over in his hands. It was ornate, with intricate designs etched into its surface. On one side, there was a small engraving. E.T. Eleanor Thompson, Malik murmured. This has to be connected to her. But where would she hide something important enough to need a key like this? Lisa sipped her coffee, her eyes scanning the notes. The last clue said, where the heart of the city beats. We thought that was City Hall, but maybe it's something else. What's the heart of a city, really? Malik thought for a moment. The people? The community? Exactly, Lisa said, her eyes lighting up. What if it's not a place, but a person? Someone who represents the heart of the city. Malik's mind raced. Like a mayor? A community leader? Maybe, Lisa said. But think about Eleanor. She was a teacher. She worked with kids, with families. What if the heart is someone like her? Someone who's dedicated their life to helping others? Malik's eyes widened. What about the school where she taught? The one in the newspaper article? Lisa nodded. That's a good place to start. The next morning, Malik and his mom visited the school where Eleanor had worked. It was an old building, its brick walls covered in ivy, but it had a warm, welcoming feel. The principal, a kind woman named Ms. Carter, greeted them at the door. Eleanor Thompson? Ms. Carter said when Malik explained why they were there. Oh, she was a legend here. She touched so many lives. What can I do for you? Malik showed her the golden key. We think this might be connected to her. Do you have any idea what it could open? Miss Carter studied the key, her brow furrowing. I'm not sure, but there is something you should see. She led them to a small room at the back of the school, filled with old yearbooks, photographs, and memorabilia. This is our history room, she explained. We keep records of everything that's happened here over the years. If there's anything about Eleanor, it would be here. Malik and his mom spent hours going through the materials, their excitement growing with each new discovery. They found more photographs of Eleanor, letters from former students, and even a few of her lesson plans. But it wasn't until Malik opened an old, dusty yearbook that he found what they were looking for. Tucked between the pages was a photograph of Eleanor, standing in front of a large, ornate door. On the back of the photo was a note. Asterisk, the key to the future lies in the past. Find the door, and you'll find the truth. E.T. Asterisk. Malik's heart raced as he showed the photo to his mom. This has to be it. But where is this door? Ms. Carter studied the photo, her eyes narrowing. I think I know where this is. It's an old building downtown. Used to be a community center. It's abandoned now, but it's still standing. Malik and his mom exchanged a glance. This was it, the next step in the journey. But as they left the school, Malik couldn't shake the feeling that they were being followed. He glanced over his shoulder, his eyes scanning the street, but he saw no one. The abandoned community center was a crumbling brick building, its windows boarded up and its doors locked. Malik's hands trembled as he inserted the golden key into the lock. It turned with a satisfying click, and the door creaked open. Inside, the air was thick with dust, and the floor was littered with debris. Malik and his mom stepped inside, their footsteps echoing in the empty space. The building was dark, but a beam of sunlight streaming through a crack in the ceiling illuminated a staircase leading down to the basement. This is it, Malik whispered, his voice barely audible. The final clue has to be down there. They descended the stairs, their hearts pounding. The basement was even darker, with only the faint glow of Malik's phone flashlight to guide them. In the center of the room was a large, metal door, its surface covered in rust. Malik's breath caught in his throat as he realized what it was, a vault. He inserted the golden key into the lock and turned it. The door groaned as it swung open, revealing a small, dimly lit room. Inside was a single object, a large leather-bound book, its cover embossed with the same bird symbol that had been on the figurine and the key. Malik picked up the book, his hands trembling. He opened it carefully, his eyes scanning the first page. It was a journal, Eleanor's journal. The pages were filled with her thoughts, her dreams, and her plans for the future. But what caught Malik's attention was the final entry. To the one who finds this, it began. Asterisk, you've come so far, and I'm so proud of you. But the journey isn't over. The legacy I've left behind is more than just money or possessions. It's a responsibility, a promise to make the world a better place. Use what you've found to continue the work I started. And remember, the greatest treasure of all is the impact you have on others. With love, Eleanor. Asterisk. Tears streamed down Malik's face as he read the words. He felt a deep connection to Eleanor, as if she were speaking directly to him. But as he turned the page, he found something that made his blood run cold. Taped to the inside of the journal was a photograph of a man Malik didn't recognize. He was tall and broad-shouldered, with a stern expression and cold, calculating eyes. On the back of the photo was a single word, asterisk, beware. Asterisk. Malik's heart raced as he showed the photo to his mom. Who is this? And why did Eleanor want us to beware of him? Before Lisa could answer, a noise echoed through the basement, a loud, metallic clang. Malik spun around, his flashlight illuminating the figure standing in the doorway. It was the man from the photograph. Well, the man said, his voice cold and menacing. Looks like you found what I've been searching for. Hand it over, kid, and maybe I'll let you walk out of here. Malik's heart pounded as he clutched the journal to his chest. The danger was real, and it was standing right in front of him. The journey had taken him this far, but now Malik realized the hardest part was just beginning. The man stepped closer, his shadow stretching across the basement floor. Malik's grip tightened on the journal, his mind racing. Who was this man? And what did he want with Eleanor's legacy? Who are you? Malik demanded, his voice shaking but defiant. The man smirked, his cold eyes glinting in the dim light. Name's Victor Crane. Eleanor Thompson and let's just say we had a history. She owed me something, and I've been waiting a long time to collect. Lisa stepped forward, shielding Malik with her body. Whatever you think you're owed, you're not getting it. This belongs to Malik now. Victor's smirk faded, replaced by a scowl. That journal and everything in it belongs to me. Eleanor stole something from me a long time ago, and I'm here to take it back. Malik's heart pounded as he glanced down at the journal. What could Victor be talking about? Was there something in the journal he hadn't seen yet? You're not taking anything, Malik said, his voice stronger now. Eleanor left this for me. It's mine. Victor's eyes narrowed, and he took another step forward. You're just a kid. You don't know what you're messing with. Hand it over, or things are going to get ugly. Malik's mind raced. He couldn't let Victor take the journal. It was the key to Eleanor's legacy. But how could he protect it? Victor was bigger, stronger, and clearly dangerous. Just as Victor reached for the journal, a loud crash echoed through the basement. Malik spun around to see a figure standing in the doorway, a woman with silver hair and a cane. It was Mrs. Thompson. Victor, she said, her voice steady but filled with anger. I thought I told you to stay away from my family. Malik's eyes widened. Mrs. Thompson? But you're alive, she said, her lips curling into a faint smile. Yes, Malik. I'm sorry I had to deceive you, but it was the only way to keep you safe. Victor has been after Eleanor's legacy for years, and I couldn't risk him finding it before you did. Victor's face twisted with rage. You think you can stop me, Eleanor? You're just an old woman. You can't protect him forever. Mrs. Thompson stepped forward, her cane tapping against the floor. I don't have to protect him forever. I just have to stop you now. Before Victor could react, Mrs. Thompson raised her cane and pressed a hidden button. A loud alarm blared through the building, and the sound of footsteps echoed from above. Victor's eyes widened as he realized what was happening. You called the police? He snarled. Mrs. Thompson nodded. They've been looking for you for a long time, Victor. It's over. Victor hesitated for a moment, then turned and bolted up the stairs. Malik and his mom watched in stunned silence as the sound of his footsteps faded away. Mrs. Thompson turned to Malik, her expression softening. I'm sorry I had to put you through all of this, Malik, but I needed to make sure you were ready. Eleanor's legacy is too important to fall into the wrong hands. Malik stared at her, his mind reeling. But why me? Why did you choose me? Mrs. Thompson smiled. Because you have a good heart, Malik. Just like Eleanor. She believed in the power of kindness, and so do I. I knew you would use her legacy to make a difference. Malik looked down at the journal in his hands, his heart swelling with emotion. I won't let you down. I promise. Mrs. Thompson nodded, her eyes filled with pride. I know you won't. The sound of sirens grew louder outside, and Malik knew the police would be there soon. But for now, he felt a sense of peace. The journey had been long and dangerous, but he had found the truth, and he was ready to carry on Eleanor's legacy. As they left the building, Malik couldn't help but feel a sense of hope. The road ahead wouldn't be easy, but he knew he wasn't alone. He had his mom, Mrs. Thompson, and the memory of Eleanor to guide him. The journey wasn't over. It was just beginning, and Malik was ready to face whatever came next. The days that followed were a blur of activity. With Victor Crane in police custody and the immediate danger past, Malik and his mom focused on unraveling the full extent of Eleanor's legacy. The journal was a treasure trove of information, filled with not only Eleanor's personal reflections, but also detailed plans for her scholarship fund, community projects, and even a blueprint for a youth center she had dreamed of building. Malik spent hours poring over the journal, his admiration for Eleanor growing with every page. She had been a visionary, someone who saw the potential in every child and believed in the power of education to change lives. Her dream wasn't just about money. It was about creating opportunities, inspiring hope, and building a better future. One evening, as Malik sat at the kitchen table with the journal spread out in front of him, his mom walked in with a cup of hot chocolate. You've been working so hard, she said, setting the cup down beside him. What's next? Malik looked up, his eyes shining with determination. I want to do what Eleanor couldn't. I want to build the youth center she dreamed of. It's not just about the scholarship fund anymore. It's about creating a place where kids can go to learn, grow, and feel safe. Lisa smiled, her eyes filled with pride. That's a big dream, Malik. But if anyone can make it happen, it's you. With the help of Mrs. Thompson and Mr. Grayson, Malik began to put his plan into action. They held meetings with community leaders, reached out to potential donors, and even started a crowdfunding campaign to raise money for the youth center. The response was overwhelming. People from all over the city, former students of Eleanor's, parents, teachers, and even strangers who had heard Malik's story, stepped up to support the project. But as the plans for the youth center took shape, Malik couldn't shake the feeling that there was still more to Eleanor's legacy. The journal had mentioned a final gift, something Eleanor had hidden away for the person who would carry on her work. Malik was determined to find it. One afternoon, as he was flipping through the journal for what felt like the 100th time, he noticed something he hadn't seen before. Tucked into the binding was a small, folded piece of paper. Malik carefully pulled it out and unfolded it, his heart racing as he read the words written on it. Asterisk, to the one who finds this, the final gift is hidden where it all began. Look for the tree with the heart carved into its bark. E.T. Asterisk. Malik's mind raced. Where it all began, that had to be the park where he had found the first clue. He grabbed his jacket and ran out the door, his mom calling after him. The park was quiet, the late afternoon sun casting long shadows across the grass. Malik hurried to the oak tree where he had found the metal box weeks earlier. He searched the trunk, his fingers brushing over the rough bark until he found it. A small, faint carving of a heart. His heart pounding, Malik dug at the base of the tree with his hands, the dirt cool and damp beneath his fingers. After a few minutes, his fingers hit something solid. He pulled it out, brushing off the dirt to reveal a small, wooden box. Inside the box was a letter and a small, golden key, different from the one he had found before. The letter was written in Eleanor's handwriting. Asterisk, Dear Malik, if you're reading this, it means you've found my final gift. This key opens a safety deposit box at the First National Bank. Inside, you'll find the resources you need to build the youth center and continue my work. But remember, the true gift isn't the money. It's the impact you'll have on the lives of others. Use it wisely and never stop believing in the power of kindness. With love, Eleanor. Asterisk. Tears filled Malik's eyes as he read the letter. He felt a deep sense of gratitude and responsibility. Eleanor had entrusted him with something precious, and he was determined to honor her legacy. The next day, Malik and his mom went to the bank to open the safety deposit box. Inside was a stack of documents, including deeds to properties, investment portfolios, and a letter from Eleanor's lawyer outlining her wishes. The resources were more than enough to build the youth center and fund the scholarship program for years to come. As they left the bank, Malik felt a sense of awe and humility. This is it, he said to his mom. This is where we start. Lisa smiled, placing a hand on his shoulder. You've come so far, Malik. I'm so proud of you. But as they walked home, Malik couldn't shake the feeling that the journey wasn't over. Eleanor's legacy was more than just money and buildings. It was a call to action, a challenge to make the world a better place. And Malik knew he was just getting started. The road ahead would be long and challenging, but he was ready. With his mom, Mrs. Thompson, and the memory of Eleanor by his side, he knew he could face anything. The final chapter of Eleanor's story had been written, but Malik's story was just beginning, and he was determined to make it one worth telling. The groundbreaking ceremony for the Eleanor Thompson Youth Center was held on a bright, sunny morning. The park where Malik had found the first clue was now a bustling construction site, with workers laying the foundation for what would soon be a beacon of hope for the community. Malik stood at the podium, his heart pounding as he looked out at the crowd of faces, friends, family, teachers, and strangers who had come to support the project. Thank you all for being here today, Malik began, his voice steady but filled with emotion. This youth center isn't just a building. It's a promise to the kids in our community that they matter, that their dreams matter, and that they have the power to change the world. The crowd erupted into applause, and Malik felt a surge of pride. He glanced at his mom, who was standing off to the side, tears streaming down her face. Mrs. Thompson was there too, her cane in one hand and a proud smile on her face. Even Mr. Grayson had come, his usual stern expression softened by a look of approval. As Malik stepped down from the podium, he was surrounded by well-wishers, people shaking his hand, patting him on the back, and thanking him for what he was doing. But amidst the celebration, Malik's mind was already racing ahead. The youth center was just the beginning. There was still so much work to do. Over the next few months, Malik threw himself into the project with everything he had. He worked with architects to design the building, met with community leaders to plan programs, and even started a mentorship program to connect kids with positive role models. The scholarship fund was thriving too, with dozens of students receiving the support they needed to pursue their dreams. But as the youth center neared completion, Malik couldn't shake the feeling that there was still more to Eleanor's legacy. The journal had mentioned a final gift, but he had already found the safety deposit box. What else could there be? One evening, as he was organizing the youth center's library, Malik came across an old photograph tucked inside one of Eleanor's books. It was a picture of Eleanor standing in front of a small, run-down building, her arm around a young boy who looked about Malik's age. On the back of the photo was a note. Asterisk, the true legacy is not in what we build, but in the lives we touch. Eat. Asterisk. Malik's heart swelled as he realized what Eleanor had meant. Her legacy wasn't just about the youth center or the scholarship fund. It was about the people she had helped, the lives she had changed. And now, it was Malik's turn to carry on that work. The day the youth center officially opened was one of the happiest days of Malik's life. The building was beautiful, with bright, airy classrooms, a state-of-the-art computer lab, and a gymnasium filled with laughter and cheers. But what made Malik the proudest was seeing the kids. Their faces lit up with excitement and hope. As he stood in the doorway, watching a group of kids play basketball in the gym, Malik felt a hand on his shoulder. He turned to see Mrs. Thompson, her eyes filled with tears. "You've done it, Malik," she said softly. "Eleanor would be so proud of you." Malik smiled, his heart full. "I couldn't have done it without you." "Or her?" Mrs. Thompson nodded, her gaze drifting to the kids on the court. "This is just the beginning, you know. There's still so much work to do." "I know," Malik said. "And I'm ready." As the days turned into weeks and the weeks into months, Malik continued to pour his heart into the youth center. He started new programs, organized community events, and even began writing a book about his journey to inspire other kids to make a difference. But the most important thing he did was simply be there for the kids who needed someone to believe in them, for the parents who needed support, and for the community that had become like family to him. One evening, as Malik was locking up the youth center, he noticed a young boy sitting on the steps outside. The boy looked about 8 years old, his face streaked with dirt and his clothes worn and tattered. "Hey," Malik said, sitting down beside him. "What's your name?" The boy looked up, his eyes wide and uncertain. "Jamal." "Well, Jamal," Malik said with a smile, "you know what? This place is for kids like you. Kids who have big dreams and just need a little help to make them come true." Jamal's eyes lit up. "Really?" "Really," Malik said. "And if you ever need anything at all, you can find me, okay?" Jamal nodded, a small smile spreading across his face. Malik felt a surge of emotion as he realized that this was what it was all about. This was Eleanor's legacy, the lives she had touched, the hope she had inspired, and the future she had believed in. As Malik walked home that night, he felt a deep sense of peace. The journey had been long and challenging, but it had also been filled with love, kindness, and the power of believing in something bigger than himself. And he knew that, no matter what challenges lay ahead, he would face them with the same courage and determination that had brought him this far. Because Malik wasn't just carrying on Eleanor's legacy, he was building his own. And it was a legacy worth fighting for.